This is Getting Past Subtitles. My name is Sean Peel,
And I'm DK Lee.
and we're done. Let's go home.
Yeah, finally.
Finally. Yay!
We're finally done.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week for the next series.
Yes. It's been a while. We've had a lot of just life going on. So
Yeah,
it's been a while
Somebody over here
since we were able to, somebody over here.
Somebody over there keeps canceling on me.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we were able to record. It took us a while to get through this series. But we are finally at the end of the road.
Tears. It's been a long and windy road.
I think it kind of suits in the series and just how
trying to make it melancholic,
slow paced and it goes on with life.
We've come of age.
Yeah. I don't know if that's how it works, bro, but okay.
Have we already?
But yeah, it has definitely been a while for us to get through this one. But I think that, for me personally, I think it has been very enlightening in terms of the films and just like how different it could be and like how like different directors have different ideas of like using the medium of film. And I think Hou Hsiao-hsien definitely has his own style, and he's like able to bring out things through film that feel, at least for me, like nostalgia, like that it feels like almost as if I've experienced those things before, and like I'm like looking back on it very fondly. Like there are like images that resonate very closely to me in his movies. And overall I think that his films evoke a kind of serenity, like a peace to them, even when it's like the last movie you watch, like it's even if it's when it's
depressing,
almost depressing and sad, and there's moments of like really just like nothing good going on. I think even then, like there are moments where you really feel like it feels almost just like it just feels like it's flowing so smoothly, as if it's just part of life. And so that's something I really enjoyed about his films so far.
It's all of his movies have just like a real like naturalism to them. I think more so well done than a lot of other movies. It's definitely to be said, like watching all these movies, more so with, because we did the series backwards. We started with like his latest and went to his earliest. And more so with his earliest works, they feel more naturalistic, and he definitely feels more creatively departured as he got older.
Goes on, for sure.
But it's like it doesn't feel like a movie. It lacks sort of like the movie quality to it. It definitely doesn't feel like anything like Hollywood or dramatized. Like it's all he just, between story and like camera work and just like everything in his style, it just captures a moment in time. It feels very like
it lets you contemplate what's on the screen. I think that's what it is. A lot of times, in this movie and the movie before too, like there are moments of big action, or like there's moments of drama where the typical Hollywood movie or typical instinct for us is to like highlight it and make it really impactful, get the close up of the characters, or really like brew in that moment. But I think a lot of the emotion of the characters in his movies, it's very muted, and that creates for the audience an opportunity to contemplate what like that situation in a way that's not spoon fed, right? Like it doesn't like tell you what to feel in that moment.
Right,
It
right.
kind of lets you like see it, and you're like, oh, oh, so that's what happened. And like the characters don't really respond to it in the typical like Hollywood sense, or like,
Yeah, yeah,
typical sense of like showing all of these emotions.
yeah.
And I think that lends the audience the opportunity to fill that void with their own ideas of how they should react to it.
Right, right.
An example I think in this movie is like a lot of the moments when characters are in moments of like uncertainty, or like moments when like another character is hurt or sick, and they're just kind of watching them, or like
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah.
people, and they're not given any dialogue or anything like that. They're just
Yeah.
staring, and you're just staring at them, staring at
The
the
other thing.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, like those moments are like the moments where I'm like, oh yeah, like what how should I process this as a
Yeah, yeah.
viewer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I think that's like the biggest difference between like making these kind of movies that are just really naturalistic and unlike um just unlike fiction basically, and like those that are, it's just like the quiet moments and like I said, like dialogue, because watching a traditional movie that is like entertainment anyway, like dialogue is written to like carry the story, right? And dialogue is a tool essentially, like it is
Mhm.
purposeful. And because of that, a lot of it is characters are characters and they're saying things that are natural. Like if they see like a burning building, it's like, oh my god, that building is on fire. And like they will verbalize it, and then
Yeah.
they like voice their actions, and they voice like things that are happening, and they'll voice what they're gonna do, or voice like what they're feeling. And watching these movies, like these characters don't,
Yeah.
because that's not what we do in real life.
Or like
We don't.
it's like those kinds of things like in Hollywood, like the concept or the idea of a one-liner,
Right,
like
right,
the whole like whole reason why we call it a one-liner is because of the fact that it is a phrase or something that really like sounds good because
right.
it's made right. We like the writer like
Yeah,
specifically created that phrase or that word or like that dialogue so that it would work well for the screen,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
and that in itself is a kind of like creating it and artificializing it, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
making it
yeah,
artificial. It's an artificial way of human beings talking. Like
yeah. Right,
people
right.
don't necessarily talk like that. Like a lot of that's the thing about really good dialogue and really good like writing in general is a lot of times like people had the time to really think about every like word that they want to choose
Right,
in
right.
writing that like dialogue, let's say.
Yeah, yeah,
And when that happens, it becomes very like it becomes so good that you're like, this isn't something that a person would normally say
yeah, yeah, yeah.
unless they're really, really like well spoken.
Right, right,
And a
right.
lot of times, like even me, like right now, like there's so many times when I say like kind of or like and all of these like
It's just mesh. It's just
words,
like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
jumbled together that create the natural, like just like instinctual way that I talk. But a lot of times in movies, it's very like
yeah.
specific, and the dialogue is so specific to the scene that it you can't help but it to be artificial,
Right,
right?
right, right,
Like
right.
it,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a bad thing because I think good dialogue should serve the scene, obviously.
right. Yeah,
But I think in the case of like his movies, Hou Hsiao-hsien's movies, it's a lot of the dialogue is not necessarily like a one-liner kind of dialogue, right?
right. Not
It's not,
crafted.
yeah, it's not, well, it's not crafted to the degree of like this like very specific to the scene, and like there's like multiple layers of meaning to what the person is saying. It's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
more like in the world dialogue that a person is talking about the other person that is sick, the mother that is sick, and like why didn't she get checked up earlier, sooner. Like it's very
Yeah,
like
yeah.
mundane dialogue, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something that people would normally talk about like in a family or something like that,
Right, right.
where they would just be like, "Oh yeah, you should have done that earlier," or like like when a kid's like running around naked, they're just like laughing and like
Yeah, yeah,
like, oh, they go there, they go again, like
yeah.
stuff like that. It's very you know naturalistic in that sense.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I mean, that's a good way of putting it. That yeah, it doesn't feel artificial. Because when you're writing it, it's just we're able to like think about it so much and just like it like naturally the way we speak, it's like a lot more reactionary,
Hmm.
right? Like, and it just kind of comes off. Whereas traditionally, or at least in movies, it's like formulated in
Right.
that sense, right?
And
That's
I'm
kind of
not
the
saying
biggest
that's
difference.
necessarily a bad thing. I
No,
just think it's a different
that's the
way of
main
going.
difference
Yeah,
between
between these two
yeah,
ways of doing things.
and it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference on like what kind of movie you're watching too.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Like
but
there are like like little moments I think of really like profound like dialogue. I think um, in his movies, and also like a lot of um, other movies as well, like Ozu's, yeah, Yasuhiro Ozu's movie as
oh
well.
yeah,
They have like these like very like spots and moments of profound
hmm
like dialogue, and then there's also moments of just like they're talking about mundane things, right?
yeah, yeah,
And like for example, for this movie, it's like when the grandpa like at the end, like is with Tung Tung, right?
yeah.
And
So
they're like by the railroad or whatever, and he's like telling him about like how to live life or whatever, and
mm,
then the narration is like, oh yeah, like my grandpa was telling me about these things, but I didn't really understand what he meant.
yeah,
I mean, those are like moments of like kind of profound dialogue, but
right, right,
even then it's a play on the structure of their relationship.
right, right.
And so
Yeah. So yeah, uh that this is definitely like the the main thing watching Hou Hsiao-hsien's movies, and I think though that aspect of it is more emphasized in his earlier stuff, like
Mhm.
as we went back, versus he definitely went like more creative, more diverse, more sort of like artificial in his later works. But I mean, like not that that's a bad thing, but I think the more creative and departure he went, like the more that kind of goes with it. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Like the assassin, a lot of it is very it feels like we talked about, it feels
Yeah.
very much like a picture, like every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And even the dialogue in that feels very um scripted
Right. Right.
in
Right.
that
Feels
sense.
like an opera almost.
Yeah,
Like yeah,
yeah.
very like theater sort
Mhm,
of. Yeah.
mhm.
So
Whereas like Summer Grandpas or even like City of Sadness doesn't have to that degree of like
not at all.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was all in all like just talking about the whole series in general, everything that we watch. Very interesting. Just like the degrees and like the diversity that we went to
Mhm.
from point A to point B. You know.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I think it's just really cool to see what he is capable of.
Yeah.
What he did. You know.
It's really like as somebody who's been in like filmmaking as well,
Mhm.
I think it's really hard to I'm trying to imagine how he pulls these like scenes, like these like moments in these characters, like
Yeah. Yeah.
and how he does it on set. Like I feel like it's such a hard thing, especially like this
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of filmmaking. I feel like it's so much harder than like
I feel like I'd have to be a guerrilla crew and just like, all right, just go spend summer at your grandpa's house.
yeah,
And then like they never see the camera.
yeah,
or
it
the
almost
director.
feels like that, right? It
Yeah.
almost feels like they're really like hidden and not trying to be known,
Yeah, yeah,
like the camera and the whole spiel, and
yeah,
there it really feels like that because a lot of like it feels so natural in the way that the characters like are in the world,
yeah, yeah.
that you almost feel like they're just doing their thing.
Yeah. It's so weird to like put it into words.
Yeah, because like but to think that like they went through all the steps of
Right,
like,
right.
okay, we're gonna
Right,
get
right.
ready,
Yeah,
get sound
you're gonna
ready.
you're gonna go to that character. You
Yeah,
want that
like
from them,
I'm thinking
and like,
about the blocking in this movie, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like
Uh,
such a good shot in this movie, a scene in this movie is when the uncle gets caught, like he gets the girl pregnant, right?
yeah, yeah.
And the grandfather's is in the house, and like
He's talking with
the
the daughter.
girlfriend,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the girlfriend's like, oh, came over, and they're like
Her
telling
mom
them
was
the
there.
news of being pregnant. And then the uncle comes in, and he like looks out the window, looks through the window, and like
He's like
he's like,
outside. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he's eavesdropping. And then the grandfather sees him, and like he like runs out, yeah, he runs out after him. And that scene with the motorcycle and the two trees, and then the uncle like running back, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
like the grandpa trying to follow him. And like I was looking at that scene, I'm like, this is such a well blocked, like well like choreographed scene.
Right, right.
Because like every moment, like it just like flowed so like beautifully within the shot, within the frame.
Yeah.
Like if I explain it, it's like the uncle runs, and then the grandfather like runs a little closer,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he gets tired and he stops.
And he stops.
And then the uncle runs like, and then
Just a
and then
little
the,
bit further,
the
yeah.
grandfather runs again, and then the uncle stops again. He looks back, and then the train, like I don't know if they matched, like they
Oh,
must
behind
have.
them. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
behind them the train goes through, and then the grandpa says the dialogue right after the train goes through, and then he turns back, and then he smashes the motorcycle, right? And it's such a well choreo. Like think about like timing that train, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
must have thought about it, right? Because like the train makes a really loud noise. You're not gonna say dialogue over that, right? So he must have been like, okay, so this is what we're gonna do. You're gonna move here, you're gonna move there, and you have to be between these two trees.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like
Like
right.
the camera never moves.
Yeah, the
but,
camera
like,
doesn't move. Like the uncle has to be seen, so he has to be between the two trees, and the grandpa obviously has to be between the
Yeah.
tree and the motorcycle, and then the train going through. So like, I'm like imagining the steps and the complications of how much like you need to do to like get this shot
Yeah,
and get
yeah.
this like idea and make it work. And yet like it feels so like grounded in the world and
Yeah, yeah.
and part of the storytelling that you're like, wow, like it's like I think it would go unnoticed just to like when people just watch it. But like if you really think like deeply into it, like there's just so much going on, like even in just that one shot that I'm like, how do you create that naturalistic feel and create like these moments of like really specific blocking and
Yeah.
and the characters really feeling the like they really belong in that world.
Yeah, yeah. Without taking them out or anything.
Yeah. And yeah, I just thought that was really like enlightening to like to see and like just realizing that.
Yeah. It's special.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. How do you? Because I know when I was like kind of watching something for the assassin, because he always works with the same like DP and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
essentially the same crew and stuff. And he has a very like unorthodox way of shooting his movies. Like, I don't even think he has like specific like blocking in mind or anything. Like he just kind of goes onto the set. Like everything, he always shoots on like natural sets for the most part. But he just kind of goes with like nothing is
Like goes with
particularly
what he
planned.
has.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what's given to him, I guess.
Exactly. But like still to like be able to like, because even with that, like you're doing the blocking in real time essentially, right? If you're not prepared,
Right.
and you have to think about things like right then and there, and
Like,
then
yeah.
everything is sort of like on spot essentially.
Yeah, you have to like imagine that like that scene. You like
Yeah.
he must have imagined it and thought about it and like had it in his mind, and he's like, okay, this is how I want it to be, right?
Yeah.
And just bringing that out in like creating it into reality
Yeah.
is like the hard part. And then it just feels like he does it so effortlessly in so many of his shots. Yeah.
He must have so much like reels of footage though,
Mhm.
because I'm imagining you have to shoot like long takes, right?
Mm.
Because you just kind of let them be, and then he just has so much film, and then like how much of that is he thinking about the editing afterward, right?
But
Like
he
it,
has to be though, right? Like
yeah,
there's so many like moments where it's oddly specific,
sure,
you know? Like and you don't like it you can't be that specific, and you can't just be like, okay, I'm gonna shoot like 10 rolls of film and just hope that like I get
and
like
it cuts into the
you
next,
could do
yeah,
that, but that's like really, really inefficient. I don't think that he
right,
works that inefficiently.
yeah,
And like you said, like in terms of like being, I think that's what the benefit of having like crew that you like work with all the time is that they know like what
yeah,
you want
yeah.
in almost like a second nature kind of way.
They just effortlessly be where they need to be
Right,
and
like
have
they're
things
so
set. Yeah,
experienced in the way that you work that they're able to accommodate like and when you work on a set, like you know, like speed is key, right? Like
sure. Yeah,
being
yeah,
fast at like preparing and giving, like preparing all the different things that you need to prepare before you can capture that moment,
yeah, yeah,
like being fast about that and being silent about what you're doing so that the when the actors are there and when they're ready to, you know, shoot the scene, like you're almost invisible at that point and they're just able to do what they're doing, right?
yeah,
and
exactly.
and like that comes with experience, and when you work with the same people over and over again, I think that that can only be, you know,
Done with, yeah. Those
yeah,
kind of,
it can only get better, right, when you
yeah,
work with the same people. And like that kind of like expertise and you know, it I think that's a value of like, you know, collaborating with, you know, people, and why so many, you know, directors and people choose to collaborate with the same people over and over again. It's not
yeah,
necessarily like a click kind of thing. It's just it's just like the value of knowing that this person understands you, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Partners for life. Um, yeah, I think like to that as well. Um, being able to do all that, but with kids,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's pretty.
Yeah, like A Time to Live and A Time to Die too, right? Like
Yeah.
so much, like a
Oh my
lot of
god.
his movies incorporates kids,
Yeah.
and especially like the coming of age trilogy,
Mhm.
and this is part of it too. Like these kids, like being able to get those moments with these children, like in one way it's a little easier, in another way it's harder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're more raw, so
Right.
like that those
It's like
kinds of,
easier. I can like imagine that it's easier for like you tell the kids to do one thing and they're like, yeah,
yeah,
like it's
yeah,
easier for
and
them
they,
to do it.
yeah,
But
there's no like veil, right? They don't,
right,
there's
right,
no
right.
mask that they really put on.
Yeah.
It's just kind of them, which is like the easier part. But then like controlling that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they're like a fire, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta try to like,
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta control burn.
yeah, you gotta control
To an
that
extent.
flame
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
certain way. And you know, he does it masterfully in so many of his movies.
Yeah. 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 I mean, just fascinating stuff. I think in
Mm,
general. Um,
yeah.
about this movie, what movie did we see again? Yeah, some of our grandpas. So we are all the way back. What time did this movie come out?
84.
1984,
Yeah.
right? I think this was like his sixth movie that he
Mm,
did. And it's part of he has like a coming of age trilogy, right? We did an episode on A Time to Live, A Time to Die. So probably look back through the episodes to find that one. It's a good one, actually. I still think it's my favorite of his movies,
mm.
to be honest. Yeah. I think it's a little on the longer side,
It is. It
but
was yeah, a
it was
lot longer
really,
than this
it's
one.
like 3 hours, right?
Yeah, yeah, almost.
Yeah. But it was really rich, I think.
Mhm.
And it does sort of the same, it has the same like tone and like style of filmmaking, like kind of everything that we talked about in a naturalistic sense
Yeah.
that came with this movie. Um, but it takes place in a different time. It's like set older,
Yeah, a little older.
a little older. But it's more thorough. It's a different. I actually think it's a different tone as in this movie, which is something I want to talk about later. But I just thought it was more rich. I think it was just more. It's definitely more drama-y.
I think this movie, Summer at Grandpa's, is a lot more accessible in terms of the storytelling and the way that it progresses the story. A Time to Live and Time to Die has, like you said, it has more like depth and the way that it explores different things.
Yeah.
It has a lot more of that, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like A Summer at Grandpa's, I think from all the ones that we've watched for this series is probably the easiest to like get into, right?
Funny enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like the story is very, very simple. And they're clear, really, really clear cut like characters that we follow.
Yeah.
And there are very specific moments that feel like they're like really moments in the movie.
Right. It's very kind of like, it's almost like chapters a little bit.
Yeah. And there's enough characters to make like there's characters and there's like the main characters interact with different characters and like there's like little bits of drama there that really push the movie forward.
Yeah.
Which gives it a sense of pace.
Yeah. And I was just happy that this was not like another 2-hour movie. It's pretty short. It's like hour 30.
Hour 30, yeah.
Yeah, so
concise.
Very good pace, very, very concise pacing. Yeah, like it's very accessible, just like I said, easy to watch. Like tonally, it's very lighthearted. Which all works, I think, to like what kind of the movie is about as well.
And it makes you feel like summer. Right?
It really does.
Like it's so summery. It's just like, oh man, like when
to go play outside.
Yeah, when Tung Tung's like laying down on the floor and just like like in the cool like floor, I'm like, that's a mood. Right? Like I feel like I've done that. Like in a summer day, when it's hella hot, like I literally like, put my face on the floor because it's cool. Right? Like
the cold side of the pillow.
Yeah, or like those moments when your friends get together and you guys all do the same thing. Like they're doing the leg, the girls are like doing the leg thing. I remember stuff like that. Like, like they all do the same stupid stuff or like, going down by the creek and
swimming naked.
Yeah, swimming naked and losing all your clothes,
Just the vibe, man.
Who hasn't done that before? Right?
Who hasn't done that before?
Yeah, but it's such a summer, like summer moment.
Right.
Like when they're climbing the trees, all of that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's pretty befitting that it's kind of the start of summer now, particularly here in the Northeast. I kind of have to watch it, and I honestly feel like I have to watch it again to like really soak it up. But it was good. It was really
I think that's for like every one of his movies.
Yeah.
It's like a second watch would not hurt.
Truly. I will say though, like you said to the characters, it's a lot easier knowing the characters in this one because it's very clear cut of like it's about the kids, right? Like Ting Ting and Tung Tung.
Yeah.
And then there's like the uncle and stuff, but they're like very clear side characters.
And there's the grandpa.
Like everybody's distinguishable, you know? Like, yeah. Because there's also like not a lot of names that go around. Like you said, it's grandpa, uncle, aunt, like you put what that character is to the person and it's just that,
Yeah.
And so I think that probably helps a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. To the accessibility of it.
Like think about City of Sadness.
Oh, dude.
You're trying to
Like
figure out which brother is which brother.
Are they even brothers?
Yeah. Like a lot of stuff like that makes it confusing.
Yeah. And so I think I don't know, it's funny because like I don't think I was expecting watching this kind of movie because I just in comparison to the other four movies that we watched, this Summer Grandpa's is a big departure from the other ones. Like we're no longer in espresso depresso lane,
Yeah.
So that was kind of a good pivot to go into. But again, like I a lot of it was like, oh yeah, like A Time to Live and A Time to Die was a lot of the comparisons while watching this in my head.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my mind pivoted. But yeah, I think it's a good movie. It's about the kids, so the mom's in the hospital, right? what did she have? I forget. Not ulcer,
Some
but
kind of, yeah. It was some. They had to do some kind of surgery for her,
yeah,
but then like they couldn't do the surgery because of some other thing, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
why it
yeah,
took longer for her. I don't exactly remember what kind of disease or
yeah.
problem it was, but
Nothing. I do like the fact that it was low stake. You felt like, and so it was very easy on the drama in that sense.
well, I mean, her possibly dying is not low stakes, but like the
Yeah,
way that it's packaged, like the way that you're perceiving it, I think,
sure.
especially because it's like through the eyes of the children, right?
Yeah,
And they don't really have a like good idea or like concept of like death and what that means.
right.
And I think that's where the coming of age part like really comes through in this movie too, is like because we're in the shoes of the kids, the children.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like in the moments of like when people like come to the hospital because like the grandpa is like a doctor,
Yeah, yeah,
they come to the hospital, they're kind of like just standing there. They're not really sure what this means, or like
yeah, yeah.
they
Just kind of
like yeah,
witnessing.
they're witnessing, like they understand that like a person has been hurt,
Yes.
but like for that to fully like hit them, they don't really understand that yet, especially Ting Ting,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
she's very small.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there are
yeah.
like moments where she does show a level of either sympathy or like understanding. Like for example, when the crazy woman, like she falls from the tree and
Yeah,
she
yeah.
gets hospitalized, and then Ting Ting, instead of like sleeping in her own room, like she goes
Sleeps with
down
her.
and sleeps. Well, she like kind of like
Or,
stays with her, and then she
yeah,
falls asleep. But like those kinds of moments really show like the growth of the character, especially like as children coming to terms with um the predicaments and the problems and the like the adult stuff, right?
yeah.
And I think that that's what you know like what it does such a good job of in this movie is really putting you in that shoe of the child,
Yes.
and
Yeah, yeah.
making it like making you understand like it's just something that a child would do, like such a you know
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a like well done way of like portraying a child in that moment.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
especially both of them,
yeah.
Tong Tong and Ting Ting,
Right.
like the moment when like Tong Tong gets he sees he was a witness to the I don't know
The
if it
Rob.
was, yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
it was he died, the murder. I don't know if he died from
I
the
don't know if he
rock,
died, but yeah.
but yeah, like that crime, he was a witness to it, and then he goes to the uncle's house, and then he sees him there, and he's like running out, and then eventually he rats them out, right?
Yeah.
And then the uncle is taken to the police, but like Tong Tong just stands there, right? Like you can clearly tell he feels guilty for ratting them out, but you can
Yeah.
also like understand his like
There's like a confliction.
right, his
in there,
fear
yeah.
of like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
no, like
What did I
they
do
might,
exactly?
well, they
Yeah.
might get me, right? Like
Yeah.
like a lot of those kinds of like childlike moments in the characters,
Yeah.
it really like is highlighted. Even and it's like there's no dialogue there
No.
for the characters,
It's just like
but you like understand so well that like that is like how children oftentimes reacts
yeah, yeah.
in those situations, and like he portrayed them so well that like I'm like, yeah, like so good.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much sums up what I was gonna say. So I guess we could just go.
All right, we're done with this one.
Yeah, that's Samurai Grandpa.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like as I was thinking about like sort of what to say in this podcast, like it was actually like word for word that like I think
Really,
it,
word for word.
yes, yes, it's to the T, every syllable.
Uh-huh.
No, like it's actually really fascinating how well he was able to like portray like narratively and like tonally like a kid facing these like adult like predicaments essentially, right? Like everything, even just outside of watching the kids and their reaction and how they react to a situation and sort of what they do or what they say or don't say for most of the time, even just like tonally, the tone of the movie and how like dramatized or less dramatized it's depicted reinforces like the child's kind of like mind, right? Like
Yeah.
there's there's the kids. There's like always a kid's naiveness, right? That child's naivety
Mm,
to situations, and I think that was like the central idea for the movie,
yeah.
and it was really it was just really interesting to see like how well that was, and I was like, wow, like
Yeah,
it
like I love
really
the scene when the kids and Tang Tang, they're trying to outcast Ting Ting, right?
yeah yeah yeah
And
yeah
like they go over the railroad,
uh
and then it's like, get out, like, don't come, don't follow. And then like he runs, past the bush,
right
and then like he sees that she's not following,
yeah
so he like looks back, and like, and that's such a childlike thing.
Such a-
I've seen that happen.
right
I've been part of that. Like I remember doing that, right? Like I remember
yeah.
there was like like a kid that we didn't want to join our
You
our
bully.
group.
Yeah.
And
He's
you'd be like, "Don't
confessing.
come," and then we would run really quick, and then we look back, and the little
Did he
kid is
follow?
like, struggling, and
Yeah.
that's such a child moment that like it's so well captured in this movie, and like in the guilt like that he feels after like she almost gets run over by the railroad, by the train, and like he's like
He's like
following
following
behind.
them. Yeah.
That's such a childlike thing.
It
Like
really is.
like that happens all the time with children when they feel guilty,
Yeah.
but then they can't really like fess up to it.
Right,
So
right.
they're like
It's like overwhelming guilt, but
Yeah.
without action.
right.
Right.
They're
It's
like 5 feet behind, and like they're just trailing you because they feel bad, but then they also
Yeah.
don't want to admit to what they did wrong.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
and they just like
It's like their
he's-
tails are between their legs.
yeah, and he just shows that so well in this movie, and like those kinds of like real like childlike moments
Right.
when the kids like, and it's like the internal like you know the internal like idea of the children, and what they are thinking, and
Yeah.
how they are behaving is so like real in this movie,
Mhm.
in both of those characters, that like it really makes the movie for me, like
Yeah.
like just seeing them like interact with the world, like whether it's their friends, grandpa, uncle,
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah. I think it's just crazy to be able to just the feat to do that. Like it's such a nuance
Right.
thing, right?
Yeah, like a lot of times when you get older, you forget about those things, and
Yeah.
I feel like Hou Hsiao-hsien never forgot about
He's
those
always
things.
a kid.
He's just like
He's-
he really understands that, like
His memory must be insane, you know?
yeah, like it's like that. It's the feeling, right? It's that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that idea of what that moment is,
Yeah.
right? Like that moment of
Pure nostalgia.
feeling, like the moment of feeling guilt, or like
Yeah.
that moment of wanting to separate yourself from a younger person because they're not cool enough, like those things, and to like depict that in a scene is so concise and so well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
It's great.
Clap. Clap. Yeah, so that's like that's like definitely the biggest takeaway. I think it's actually kind of funny that like we're able to come to that conclusion so easily too as well.
Mhm.
But that just speaks volumes to the execution of the
Yeah,
movie, I
yeah.
think, in general, And so yeah, I like thinking about this, and like I keep saying about A Time to Live, Time to Die, but just the comparisons of like A Time to Live and Time to Die is so, I don't want to say dark, but it's more mature
Yeah,
in
yeah,
its coming of ageness, right?
yeah,
It is like eventually becomes about like more like teenage kind of
Mm.
teenagers and coming of age, and this is more of like just children in that sense.
preteen and children,
and like 8
and
years
a child.
old. And a child, yeah. But they kind of do both really well, but it is like totally different, where this one's a lot lighter and more kind of that kid's innocence, that like very naivety. And Time to Live Die is more like coming into sort of like very early adulthood.
Yeah,
Like, for that
I
moment.
think A Time to Live and Time to Die is a lot more coming of age,
Yeah.
where this one is like they're like the first moments of them
Coming
like
to teens.
yeah, the first like sparks of like realization and like consciousness of like the adult life, or
Yeah.
of the adult world.
Like it's funny, I guess, like in the way that they're both sort of coming of age, right? It's you're taking these young characters and they're confronting sort of adulthood in
Mhm.
a certain aspect,
Yeah.
and they're just kind of they're learning from it in their retrospective
ways.
like age, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
and so it's really cool to see this in this movie, right? Like you have, I guess Ting Ting's like 11 years old or something, or Tung Tung's
Tung
11
Tung,
years old,
yeah.
and Ting Ting's probably like
7.
7, 8,
Yeah.
something like around that. Um, and so they definitely they have like really no idea of sort of adulthood, but they see it and they're witnessing it and they're kind of coming to terms with it in a very like conflicting way. Uh, but like just like in such an honest, like raw way, like as kids would, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, like so when the uncle gets like the girlfriend pregnant, things is like, oh, I guess you're
Right.
gonna be dead now.
Yeah.
Or like yeah, like when the grandpa's kind of spewing life to him, he's like,
I don't
I
understand
don't
what he
really
said,
get
but I
any.
think it was about my uncle.
Or even like the biggest thing, like you know, like his own sister, sort of like almost dying from an
Mm.
accident. It's something that he could have caused himself, you know.
Yeah.
And like the weight of that doesn't completely connect with him, but seeing it sort of unfold in
Mm.
his like how he reacts to it is
Yeah.
such a so perfect in how an
Right.
11-year-old would,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
What are any favorite scenes from the movie?
I don't know if there's any particular.
Mm.
I think like this movie feels like a montage in like summer
Mm.
kind of thing, you know, like
Mm.
between the kids having fun naked in the river and like the cow poop
Yeah.
coming down and the sister like throwing all their clothes and in rebellion, you know,
Yeah.
and just kind of like all the little moments sort of adding up into summer vacation essentially.
Yeah.
My take though is that this is actually a gangster movie, right?
Yes,
He-
go on.
Hear me out.
Go on.
Right. You have Tung Tung and Ting Ting. They got to go to their grandpa's house for summer, right? They went to this new neighborhood. What happens when they get there? Their uncle leaves them. They get abandoned by their uncle, right?
Yeah.
To get there, and they're stuck in the streets of this town. And what's waiting for them? A bunch of like gang kids in the river. And Tung Tung's just minding his business. He's playing with his toy, you know. They're waiting for their uncle. They're like, Grandpa's gonna get mad at him. You know, they're actually looking out for the uncle, you know,
Yeah.
kind of goaded for some kids.
Yeah, for kids.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Actually kind of goaded thought. And then what happens? They wait. The uncle ends up finding them. Like, oh my god, thank God you're not still. You guys weren't lost. But Tung Tung gets suckered out of his toy for a turtle by all the gang kids. You know.
Yeah.
And when they walk away, the kid is like, I can't believe you traded that this toy for a turtle. You know. They're like, whoa. So they go back home, they meet the grandpa, blah, blah, blah. What happens? All the gang kids follow the new kid on the block. Like, yo, that's the house, that's the kid. Yo, come with us. They convince him to join the gang to extort him more out of his toys. Because what happens? They all bring their turtles and they're like,
Oh my.
yeah, yo, trade for the toy. We got turtles. And he's like, I don't know. And they're like, come on, don't be a wuss.
I don't know about this gang stuff,
no.
man.
And then he goes along with it, and then they indoctrinate him. And what happens? You know, he's one with the gang members. He's part of the team. They go dancing naked in the river. You know, they don't let his sister. He becomes a bully against his own sister. He's supposed to be taking care of his sister.
Yeah.
He becomes a bad kid.
Bad boy.
Yeah, bad boy. He's hanging out with the bad influences.
Yeah.
You know, what's the saying? You hang out with dogs, you're bound to get fleas. You know? And then what happens? He almost kills his sister.
Uh-huh.
He does all these things, you know? But then at the end, he has moments of clarity that turns him back. You know, he confronts adult gang members. And he's like,
oh, this ain't the way.
yeah. He sees his future.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this ain't how I want to end up.
He sees the future and he's like, whoa, I should slow down while I'm ahead, you know? And he starts to doubt.
Yeah,
And then
backtrack.
his sister almost dies, and he's like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then he confronts his ways and he becomes a new man at the end, you know?
Okay, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. You know, one thing though, I felt bad for the turtles, man.
Honestly,
they're brutal, man. These kids are brutal.
They were like,
Damn, dude, they won't let up, man. Give them a break. Holy crap.
Man, poor turtles.
Wow.
It's not the straws that gets them.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think my favorite scene or like moment was um when they're finally like, it's the last day of them staying at the grandpa's place, and then
Yeah.
they're they're about to leave, and the car's here, dad's here, and Ting Ting like looks like back, and like the crazy girl is like walking out in the distance, and
Yeah.
and she calls out to her, but then she doesn't hear, and she just like goes. And then Tong Tong is like, "Hey, we gotta go," and just that like moment of like missed opportunity, right, for her to like say bye to her, but then she just kind of moves on with her life. I think I really like that moment. It's kind of a bittersweet kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because in one sense, she is like
We've
her
been through much
savior.
together.
Yeah, right. She saved her. She saved her life.
Yeah.
Also, she's like, like the crazy woman is kind of like, it's kind of sad, right? Like her life is kind of sad. Like she got like raped by that like guy.
Yeah.
And then like she like lost a child or whatever.
Yeah.
Like she but then she's also like mentally
ill and
so like she
outcasted.
has all these like unfortunate circumstances in her life, and yet like she kind of she lives on.
Yeah.
Whereas also like Ting Ting kind of she's kind of like in one way like a friend to her, or like one way like she levels with her the most, right? Yeah. Like when she like brings the bird to her, and like she cries for the bird and stuff like that, or obviously like her saving
there's like a mutual
Ting Ting.
kind of like
there's like a little bit of like an understanding. Like she's the most like like I said, like she's willing to get down to her level, like the crazy woman, whereas like Tong Tong like wants to like get rid of her. The parent, like the
it's
grandma,
the gang's influence, man.
Like the grandma and grandpa are too busy doing their own things, and she's never like quite being able to fit in with everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet,
so
like
like sort of the outcast kind of.
Yeah, and she kind of is able to bond in that way with her, and at the end, they kind of part ways. And I just kind of thought that was a bittersweet moment that was really profound. Yeah, I liked it. Like it's like, it's like she is like that one person that I feel like she would like come back to remember.
Yeah,
like when she gets older.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a huge impact, but like kind of.
But like never really knew that person, but they were a big influence on their life, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of gave me those vibes. So I was like, that's cool.
It's a coming of age moment.
Yeah.
No, I actually definitely agree. I mean, like again, I think that's just it's like speaks to like such big sort of events and like trauma even, but it's delivered in such of like a almost like passive kind of way, right? It's never like dramatized or even settled on sort of like exactly what it means that lady was going through, but more just like you're just like a kid witnessing it, like just exactly like how Ting Ting was kind of seeing it,
Yeah.
But then you kind of see like just that level of like childish compassion, it's that they kind of have for each other, sort of at the end.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a really nice like give and take that they have.
Yeah.
Like she saves her, and Ting Ting like is with her when she's hurt. Like those kind of little moments that they have. Like it's I really like that moment when the grandpa is like trying to get her, trying to help her, the crazy woman, because after she fell.
Yeah.
And he's like, get out, like, get out, like, stop, like, standing there, like, get out of here. But like, she's like, has those like really like intense eyes, like
Yeah.
eyeballs, like staring at grandpa. He's like, no, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna see how she's doing, kind of thing. And then the brother has to come over and be like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
Come on. Stop
Yeah.
disturbing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, like, really good, really good watch. Yeah.
Mm.
And the fact that it ends so like abruptly too, it's just like, all right, it's time to leave.
Yeah, it's time to go now. Mom's
Yeah,
good.
Mom's
You know,
good.
dad
All
came
right,
back in the
bye.
summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought like, I guess honestly, I don't know. Like, I guess that's not how I really expected the movie to end. Because particularly, I think because the movie opens up with the graduation ceremony,
Mm.
um, and just sort of like the thematic of usually openings and endings. It's like starts with like graduation and ends with something else, or like starts with a birth, ends with like a death. That kind of sort of vibe, you know. But I don't know. I think I was like kind of pre-expecting something like that.
Well, you were wrong.
I was wrong. Starts with graduation, ends with saying goodbye to grandpa.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
I
overall,
guess that's the start of summer, right? Like the school year's over.
yeah.
So,
End of school. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I guess pulling back in terms of all the movies, so we saw The Assassin, Millennium Mambo, Goodbye South Goodbye. Last was City of Sadness, and then this one is Summer of Grandpas. We made a lot of headway. We went from 2015 all the way back
To 84.
to 84. What is that, like 50 years?
Is that really? Oh no.
50,
Really?
50
Maybe
years.
like 40 years.
Maybe 40. 80 to 90 to 2000 to
2010.
Yeah.
Like what was
it's
Assassin 2018?
Assassin was 2015,
2015, yeah.
but 1984 to 2014 would be 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So 31.
2014.
2014. Yeah, so 31 years is this time, yeah. It's a lot of time. It's 31 years, and to be like it's a Hou Hsiao-hsien movie when you watch it, you know, just to like have sort of your DNA be able to come across like the span of your career. But then I think also going back to the beginning of like the podcast and what we're talking about, it does feel like watching at least what we saw in his career. It's like he started making movies about one thing and in one way. It feels like really naturalistic, really like very like nostalgia-esque, right? Like just kind of like capturing what it meant to be like a teenager in this time, or what it meant to be, or what was like this sort of scene in this town. You know what I mean? Like he's just really
or
capturing
like the young adults of like, you know, Millennium Mambo, or like the nightlife and all that stuff. Or
it's very specific into like a person in a time, kind of like what does it mean to be in this time? I feel like is what he's always trying, what his movies are always about, what he likes making film for. But then like shifts, and I think like by the time you hit like Millennium Mambo and The Assassin don't necessarily feel like that. And he kind of goes a little more creative, a little more like traditional sort of like film anyway, like just more scripted, I guess you could say, right?
I think he's trying to push his own boundaries too, right? Like trying to see, you know, how he can use the medium of film in different ways, and in ways that he feels like is, you know, pushing those boundaries for himself.
Yeah, I just think it's cool, like being able to like how he started, and he's taking all those things that he's learned and his style and like how he shoots, like both narratively and practically, and then how he kind of shifts into like a new departure in his career, but still maintaining like the way he does it, you know?
Like I can appreciate, you know, like for example, like the consistency of like a Wes Anderson, like the style.
Right.
But like I think that Hou Hsiao-hsien, like there is definitely an underlying like DNA of his, but I really do appreciate his fearlessness to try to push things in different ways that even like traditionally what he would normally do, like even those things he tries to like, you know, brought in those in it within the lane of like what he is kind of
Yeah.
you know, accustomed to, or like he is known for, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Like I appreciate the fact that like he wants to do new things, or like, you know, try out
Yeah.
other things that are not necessarily his like MO per se.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't even think that's necessarily like completely true, because I think, you know, a lot of his, you know, style does come out
Yeah.
through his even the newer ones.
Yeah.
But I think that like idea and that desire to challenge himself in new ways is always like something that I appreciate.
Yeah. It's different from like when it's Wes Anderson or like Tarantino, where it's the same idea of, or it's the same
Like structure.
trademark
Yeah.
of like, oh yeah, if I see a Wes Anderson movie, I know like this is Wes Anderson. Or if I see a Tarantino movie, I know this was made by Tarantino. But they kind of stay in the boundaries of like their storytelling
Yeah.
per se, and it like that's sort of the difference I feel like with Hou Hsiao-hsien, where he does challenge the stories that he tells.
Even the notion, like even the structure, like he kind of
Right.
tries to move that forward, or like sometimes like a lot of, you know, directors would only try or only use like a certain kind of lens, or like only use like, you know, this way, like it's like their signature, you know, you know, way of shooting things. And yet I think that um he's not shy about like trying to do other things with things as
True.
well, you know.
Yeah.
Because like Millennium Mambo and the way that Millennium Mambo is shot and the way that the assassin is shot is very different,
Very
right?
different. Yeah.
Like there are things that he's doing differently that he wants to portray in different ways.
Hmm.
And ultimately I think that if it serves a story the best, like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter like necessarily what the, you know, like if the choices are meant to serve the story the best, I think that's what's most important.
Right.
But yeah, even the fact that he is, you know, tailoring it to his stories, I think is really
Yeah.
awesome.
So I think that's a really huge thing to be said too, though.
Mhm.
Like, because I don't feel like again, it's it's like a directorial like journey, right? Like you I was able to like witness like a journey within himself as a
Yeah.
director.
Mhm.
That's not something that you kind of get all the time with other prophetic directors,
Mhm.
right? You know?
Yeah,
So
like yeah. I wouldn't say like they're stagnant, but they use the same, you know,
yeah.
methods
It's like
and the
well,
tried and true way of doing their signature, you
yeah.
know,
What the only thing that
style.
gets bigger, like yeah, I'm thinking of like yeah, Wes Anderson and like Nolan and like all these people. Like what gets bigger is like their budget and their scale of the way that they're able to do what they do,
Yeah.
but they're not really sort of pushing their themselves. I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah.
they're not like changing the paradigm of the way that they um look at the way that they shoot,
Yeah.
right? Like you can kind of see like from like let's say from Interstellar
Mm-hmm.
to like Tenant, or like from like, you know, from Batman to like Inception.
Yeah.
Like it feels very similar in the way that, you know, the story is told,
Right.
the structures, lens choices, like
Yeah.
the, you know,
He's
the
always gonna shoot
action.
IMAX. You know.
Right, yeah, like like, you know, like there are very like Nolan things that he does constantly that that are like almost his identity now, like his sound design. Like you can like you listen to like his films and you're like, oh yeah, like I can tell this is Nolan, right? Like
right.
and, like there are ways like he incorporates things that are really like consistent in all of his movies. And
Yeah.
and like Hou Hsiao-hsien, like his earlier ones are very consistent
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, but also a little like they're like little things that are like
Yeah.
changing and like differences. Like
Right.
Goodbye South Goodbye feels a lot looser than you know, than like, you know, Summer at Grandpa's, right? It feels a lot looser. Like the characters feel a lot more not as like grounded, or like not as like specific in the way that they are, you know, the characters, like you're not really sure who they are, like in terms of like how fleshed out they are. Like
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's very
Who's
easy. Like
important or
Tong Tong, you're like, this is the kind of kid he is, right? Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
like very like concrete idea of that. But like, the characters in Goodbye South Goodbye, you're like, oh, is he this kind of person or that kind of person? You're not really sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Like he's a gangster, but is he like good gangster or bad
Yeah.
gangster?
It's like a lazy dude.
Lazy- yeah.
What is he up to? Like
Yeah,
who
yeah.
like is he competent? Like you're not really sure.
Right.
And then Millennium Mamba too, like you're like you're moving more and more towards that.
Yeah. Right.
And then
right.
and then in Assassin, it's like a complete departure from that as well.
Exactly.
You're like you're like, yeah, I know exactly who she is. Like what kind of like
clear tropes.
right.
But yeah.
So like yeah, it's really cool to see him like change those things in ways that
Yeah. Yeah. I think exactly that. Very very bold. Very bold and like brave.
Yeah.
I think talking about pulling back. That's probably like the biggest thing that I noticed, but probably my most favorite thing to
About
point
him.
to make anyway. Yeah. Just being like, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of diversity
Yeah.
in all of these movies. So that we haven't seen in even like the other retrospectives that we have done anyway. So
Yeah, so it was really enjoyable for me. I think it was hard to go through, I think, in the sense that like watching the movies are not the easiest to watch.
yeah.
They're not the most like digestible, but I think they're kind of like veggies, right? Like you chew on them, they're really good for you, dude. Like you really get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
It's like yeah.
It took me this far to be like, wow, I'm Popeyes. I'm actually good and healthy now. I'm actually glad I ate all those vegetables.
Yeah, like you don't regret watching it. Yeah, you don't regret eating veggies.
No.
Like when you're eating it, you're like, but you're like,
the
that was
doing
great.
part is a little tough.
And you learn to appreciate eating more veggies, right? Like, I should eat more of this.
Yeah. I remember seeing like, I think a friend sent me it was like one Oscar season. Oh no! It was like a bit from a comedian, and he was like, Oscar movies are like eating your vegetables. It's like I know it's good for you, like I know it's great in the long term, but I don't want to eat it right now. I want popcorn and a cinnamon roll.
I need my steak.
Yeah, exactly.
I need my Nolan movies.
Exactly.
I need my Transformers.
Let's go.
I need my fast food.
Fast 10. I need my fast.
I need my fast 10.
my fast 10.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean there are movies for every occasion.
Yeah.
And speaking of occasions,
I feel like we've eaten enough veggies. we've dieted.
How fitting that though that our next series is
it's time for beef, baby. Some beef. Yeah, so a little bit of a departure. We're not doing a movie for the next series. We're actually going to do a series for the next series, which is, this one is very new. Just came out not too long ago on Netflix, so easily accessible. It is an A24 production, so I'm goated. And it is called Beef.
How fitting.
How fitting. Yeah, Steve Yeun, our guy, I forgot what his name was.
Can't recall.
I think her last name is Wong.
Yeah, it is Wong.
Right?
It is Wong.
Yeah.
And I have like ideas of like first names that I could say, but I don't want to say it because I'm probably gonna be wrong.
Miss Wong. We're gonna go with Mrs. Wong. Yes. But yeah, it's 10 episodes long, and we decided because they only have 30 minutes each.
Yeah.
So we decided to group them up in 2.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do 2 episodes
per
episode.
Yeah, per episode. So it'll be 5 episodes
total
of beef.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of good things about it. Like a lot of friends that I have, they were like, oh yeah, you should definitely watch it. And I think it'll be a good watch. It's an American Asian film, which is something that we don't do too much of, but I think also Sean was like, I need to go into the present,
Yeah,
man.
man. I need my I need
I
my
need my HD.
yeah.
My
I
4K.
need my 4K. I was like, there's pixels on my TV I haven't been using in a couple of months. You know, I need to activate the HDR.
Yeah, so I think it would be a good change of pace as well. Doing a series, and I think it's a different medium. I think in the sense that
Yeah.
it's a television series or like a ongoing series or like a mini series like that is very
Yeah.
different way of telling story to like a movie, which is like 3 hours tops,
Yeah,
4 hours maybe tops.
Yeah.
And so it would be cool seeing how like the structure of a series like this, and the implications that it has on the storytelling.
Yeah. Even just like, I think like for us in particular, just like discussion wise, I know that there's a lot of like series podcasts that that have sort of episode by episode kind of
Yeah.
watches and things like that. Well, that's something that we haven't done, so I'm pretty interested to see how we are able to converse in that sense.
Yeah, like a lot of times, when the reason why for me at least like it's hard for me to get into series is because it's so time consuming.
Sure.
And like I told Sean,
whatever. This guy,
I told
during
Sean
the
before,
pandemic, watched Game of Thrones in 30 days.
No, that was not during the pandemic. It was when the finale was about to come out.
Oh yeah, even worse.
Yeah, so I like literally binged the whole like 1 through 7 in like a month. Before like the month
did it during the pandemic. Okay, it was 3 months.
The month before the finale came out, I did that.
Yeah.
But like Game of Thrones, people said so many good things about it that like I knew going in that it was worth watching.
Sure, same.
A lot of times, like when it's a new series, you're not really sure if it's gonna be.
Right.
So like I have a reluctance to like start it.
Yeah, there isn't that authentic like or legitimacy, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like I joke around with Sean, and I'm like, yeah, it requires a 2-year marination period before I'm like, yeah, I'll watch it with no like
He's
hesitation.
like, doesn't stand the test of pop culture.
Yeah, it doesn't stand the test of time, man. It's like fine wine, the long is it like wine where like the longer it is the better, or is it like milk where it starts to spoil real fast?
This is gonna open up another can. We're gonna have to save this discussion for next week when we talk about it. But I'm like, do you think that because there's like Game of Thrones, right? Like Breaking Bad, like Walking Dead, like all these shows stand the test of time and they're long running shows, like premium TV, whatever. Like that's the norm now. Like premium TV is like streaming, quote unquote. But it's like, do you think that because it's so saturated now, like we're gonna have sort of golden show gooses like that again?
Right. Well, I think I'm very, very selective about series and its like position in that, because I don't think like for me like the series the different series that I've watched of different shows, there are only a handful that I'll be like, this is like this is like top tier.
Right.
Other ones would be like, yeah, those are good, but I don't think that they're like at that like
holy grail.
Yeah, they're not like, I don't think they would stand the test of like 30, 40 years, right?
Sure.
Like Game of Thrones, I don't think will stand the test of like 30, 40 years.
You don't think so?
Yeah, well, because it failed at the end, right? Like it like really dropped off, right? And that
I don't know. Go ahead, let him cook.
Let him cook. The 8th season, you think that was like?
Well, I'm not saying that just
like
I'm disagreeing with the fact that because the last 2 seasons fell off, that just taints the entire series.
I think it does. Well, I think in the grand scheme of things it does, because like I'm thinking about like Breaking Bad status, where like it's like it's like from 1 to 50, it's like it does not miss, right? Like
sure.
That's like where I'm like the standard is for like a series that does not miss, right? Whereas I feel like Game of Thrones, like it was great, but it has its problems.
Sure.
And it has its failings, especially at the end. And I think like a testament of a truly good like series is how it ends, like how it finishes.
Sure.
You know, like it can like a lot of shows starts out really well, right? Like you're like, oh, the first season is really great, but like, you know, it falls off. Like I don't consider that in the top tier, like
upper echelon.
I would say the season was great, right? Like I could say that. Like I would say like I enjoyed the first season of Witcher, but I heard like really bad things about the second and third season. So I'm like, you know, like I would not put that like at that level, right? Whereas like, for example, like Cowboy Bebop does not miss. You know what I mean? Like Samurai Champloo does not miss.
Does not miss.
Like Full Metal Alchemist does not miss.
Okay, hold on.
Like, those are series that like really like, you know, that maintain the level and quality like throughout. You know, Breaking Bad and stuff like that. So
it's a dime a dozen for sure. Yeah. I get that's what I'm saying. Like, I think like even then, like when those shows are out, like it's not what it is now. Like, you know, streaming, it's not the norm. Like it having long form storytelling like that, it kind of comes at a like slower pace.
Yeah.
Now we're constantly getting new IPs and
like the Avatar does not miss. Like the
Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Goaty.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think like that it has stand the test of time. But in my opinion, like, I mean, you can't say for sure, but I think that because the market is so saturated now, I think it's obviously it'll be like much harder to be sort of in that upper echelon of quality.
I agree.
But also like because there's so much, like I think the rate of like socially and like conversationally, is it even possible to have something like that again, you know?
I think like there'd probably be a lot of series that are like A B tier, right?
Yeah. There's
Like
gonna be a lot
A
of
tier,
good
B
ones for
tier.
sure.
Yeah.
But like 10 years from now, if it comes out now,
Yeah.
and in the
Would you
status
still
that
be
we're
talking
in,
about it 10 years later?
Exactly. Right.
Probably not.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Like
It's like it's like shooting itself in the foot because things like Game of Thrones, Avatar, all those things will still be in conversation.
that's what I'm saying. Like you still talk about Game of Thrones, it has fallen off. Like you talk about it because of how hard it failed at the end.
Right.
Right.
But
That's the meme.
It's still
of
like
it.
a social thing, right?
That's the meme of it. But like, for example, Breaking Bad, like you still talk about it. Like when you talk about a good show, you're like, oh, that's the one thing that you like. That is one of the top tier like shows. You're like, oh yeah, like that you have to watch, right?
Yeah.
Even like Better Call Saul, I heard was like really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, there are shows like that where like you constantly go back to it. Whereas I feel like there are a lot of shows now where like, sure, like you can watch it and you could enjoy it, right? But you don't really like it. Like I said, it doesn't really stand the test of time in that same regard.
Yeah.
Unless it's like memed on.
Sure. Right.
Which
But
I
even
don't.
then, like
Right. Even then, I don't think that's necessarily like.
memes come and go.
Right.
So another show that is up there though is Mr. Robot. I said it here first. I'm sticking by it.
Mr. Robot.
The stamp of approval.
We'll see about that. No, I think I watched a few, but I never really could get into it. But
I really liked it. Yeah,
maybe I'll try it.
Yeah,
again.
I hella binged that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, like kind of really good. But yeah, that was a side episode for that's a pre-episode for next week.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or beef. Yeah.
or beef. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Mm.
I think for the most part, it's an excuse for us to watch it.
Yeah. So first and second episode we'll watch and we'll review next week.
Yeah.
And we'll continue on from there.
We'll see you then. Peace.
Bye.